part 2, I've been through and checked all the components against tick list. Only had one thing missing, which was a resistor. However, I did find that the little trim pot on the circuit didn't actually fit the turret board. That's because I believe it's supposed to be a horizontally orientated one with it, whereas I got sent a vertical orientated one. But I've been in touch with Modus, and those will get sorted out. A couple of things to note: the captive nuts, the cage nuts that we use to hold the chassis in place, no bolts are provided with that, and Modulus say that's because people request different colours, different lengths and so on, so that's perfectly understandable. However, there was no mention of that initially, but I suppose you could check the pick list before you order it, but that was a bit of a surprise. There was no brown wire for the IEC socket feed to the switch. However, again, Modulus say, well, there's plenty of brown wire on the transformer itself, so that gets reused, and I obviously didn't think of that at the time. While we're talking about the transformer, in the first video, when I picked up the transformer, I looked down at the circuit diagram down by my side and said, oh, that's interesting, must look into that. And that's because there was an orange wire missing, and in replace was a green-yellow wire. Now the circuit layout shows an orange wire. Again, Modulus sent me another layout which shows the green-yellow wire. It goes to exactly the same place. However, more disconcerting was that other layout didn't show two resistors on the valve socket, so I found that a bit confusing. Also, going through the checklist, I found I had 7 resistors that weren't on the layout, but they were on the pick list. Modulus say that they are looking at the pick list and they'll be updating that and sorting out those sorts of issues. But better to have too many parts than too few, I suppose. Things I didn't particularly like when I was putting the main components together. As you can see, I've put the fascia on, I've added all the sockets, the indicator switch, the pilot light. On the back, we have the IEC socket, the 2 fuse holders and the 3 speaker outputs. The turret board, when you're putting the hardware in, is only held in place with 2 standoffs, and although it's not the largest of turret boards, it is quite large, and I don't think that really just 2 standoffs is sufficient. But I mean, Modulus obviously think it is, so we'll go with that. I might put a little bit of there's no point actually in putting any packing and thinking about it, because it's underneath, so it'll be falling away from the chassis. I don't particularly like these bezels that they provide. I find I can never tighten them up securely without damaging the fascia, and this fascia is prone to collecting fingerprints, and it does scratch quite easily, I'm finding. I also don't particularly like this I think Fender style dual indicator light, and I think I prefer the cheaper fully enclosed one, not the sort of the frame type that they supply, which is I find just not a very nice design, to be perfectly honest. yes, so I would prefer to have the budget version. About my specific order, the only upgrades I made were for Mallory 150s, for the capacitors, and the main caps I've upgraded to F&Ts. I didn't upgrade the pots. I haven't ordered a cabinet. I like to make the cabinet myself, basically from old scraps of wood that I've got around. I can usually come up with something that looks quite reasonable, I think, if not professional, using recycled wood. I also didn't order it with any valves. I've got plenty in my stash, as it were, to cover me for those. A couple of tips. When you're putting the pots on or the sockets on, it's quite easy to scratch the fascia, and same with working on guitars or anything else. And what I have purchased are these, they're called rocket sockets. You get a set of 8, and they're really rather nice. They're made of some sort of polymer compound. Set of 8s, all the common sizes you'll need. I got mine from a company called 5 Cats Pedals. That's 5-cats-pedals.co.uk, and they're about £12, so it's quite expensive for a set of 8 sockets, but they really are ideal. They're deep, they're lightweight, you can carry them around. You can always find them in your tool bag because they're fluorescent green. They don't come in this pouch. That's something I just keep them in, and that is, they are ideal for doing work on guitars and amplifiers and anywhere where you don't want to damage the surface. The other thing I found is my fingers are getting quite clumsy these days, so putting in the really tiny M3 bolts and nuts, I find it's quite difficult to hold the nut against the piece of work, especially if it's in a tight corner. So what I tend to use, let me just get a nut out, which will probably now drop, is I use a couple of inches of silicone tubing, which I then just slide the nut into like so, and that allows me to hold it against a piece of work without having to constantly try and grip it. And as you tighten it up, it just pulls out of the silicone tube, or you just pull it off, and that works really well with those hard to hold and difficult to reach nuts that you're trying to put onto the sockets. As I say, the standoffs for me, only 2. I don't know if you can see them there. One here and one here, there and there. Could really, I think, do with a few more, or at least 3, to hold the board. I mean, as I say, the board isn't that large, but fully populated. I feel there will be a bit of twisting in there, but we'll see. Next up, as I say, put on the front fascia, put on all the knobs, put on all the pots, sockets, switches, pilot light. On the back, IEC connector, 2 fuse connectors, and the 3 speaker outlets. So the next thing to do will be to wire up everything that's in here that can be wired up, and to populate the turret board. Obviously I do have need to get the one missing resistor, and there is the issue of the trim pot, but hopefully Modulus will sort that out quite quickly. So that's all now for number 2 in the series, because I'm now going off to my workshop area, which is in my garage, to heat up my soldering iron and get on with actually doing some of the wiring. Thank you. Bye. Just a quick view of my work area where I do my soldering. This is in the garage attached to the house, and as you can see, I don't have a particularly large bench, but it is sufficient to doing just most of the little work, the little pieces that I do. So here we are. The unit is on my bench, ready to start the soldering. I have the plan up there, or the layout, and I'll be starting this within the next minute or so.